Testing two. All right, testing. 1 2 1 2. Testing. 1 2 1 2. Okay. All right. All right. Shalom. All right. First and foremost, I want to say, Call Halal Yallah, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Harakakadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned the truth from. And also peace and salutation to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, whoever you are, wherever you may be at in these outer days. All right, shalom. Salakia for the delayed start for today's camp. I had technical difficulties, moving to different locations in this park. Okay, but seems like right now we're good. And call all yam la Yahweh Shema Shai. And Lord willing, this camp speaking to be edifying. Okay, of course, like always, first and foremost with the Hebrew Israelites. All right, we come out on the streets of America, which is known as Babylon the Great, according to the Bible, as well as throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay, to do what? To preach the gospel and the truth of the Heavenly Father through His begotten Son, which the name of the Heavenly Father, whom this world ignorantly calls God, is Yahweh. In the name of His begotten Son, whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, is Yahweh Shai. Okay, and the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai has raised up a remnant of His people, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the true Israelites according to the Bible. All right, the Lord has raised up a remnant of His people in these latter days. Okay, especially His prophets and His men of the Lord to do what? Go out on the streets, preach the gospel of the Bible. Okay, which includes what? Preaching the destruction of America, Babylon the Great. Okay, as well as preaching that Yahweh Shai, the begotten Son of the Heavenly Father, is getting ready to come back, okay, and take down the rulership of Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, as well as the rulership of the rest of these heathen nations, okay, and set up his people back into power, all right, the elect of his people, known as the tabernacle of David, all right, and so let me check the sound real quick, make sure I'm still good. Okay, good. Call Elohim La, Yahweh Shema Shai. All right. So as always, as I always start my camp speakings in the book of Second Esdras in the Apocrypha. All right, chapter 15 and verse 1. It says, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true." You know, and when it's all said and done, all right, by the time Yahweh Shai comes back, the begotten Son of the Heavenly Father Yahweh, okay, the words of the Heavenly Father are going to be found faithful and true, okay, because as the scripture speaks about in Isaiah, the 55th chapter, let's get it real quick. Isaiah 55. Isaiah 55, and let's start at verse 10. It says, "For as the rain cometh down, and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth a bud, that it may give seed to the sower, and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it." So the words of Yahweh Shema Shai via prophecy don't come back unto him void. Okay, but instead what? They accomplish everything that Yahweh Shema Shai said. All right, says that he would do in the earth throughout generations. And so, what does the Lord purpose to do in these times? Take down Esau, Edom, so-called white man. All right, pursuant to the theme of today's camp, the end of Esau's world. All right, and that's pursuant to. All right, let's get that. The book of 2nd Ezra, also in the Apocrypha, 2nd Ezra chapter 6, and start at verse 7. It says, "Then answered I and said, What shall be the parting asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first, and the beginning of it that followeth?" Verse 8, "And he said unto me, From Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born, of him Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau." All right, verse 9, "For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth." All right, so Esau, Edom, the biblical Edomites, the nation of Esau, Edom, would be the biblical nation that will be ruling the earth, the fatness of the earth. All right, in these latter days before Yahushua comes back, okay, Esau, Edom would rule the earth, the fatness of the earth, starting with his top tribe, which is what? Amalek, which are who? Those small hats that's over there in the land of Israel right now, okay, bombing, all right, linking up with Trump and Babylon, the Great America, okay, calling themselves the JEWs. Okay, still good. All right, yeah. Those small hats that's over in the land of Israel are Edomites, okay, according to what the tribe of Amalek of Esau, Edom. All right, so they will be the main group of Edomites in these latter days that will be ruling over the fatness of the earth, controlling all the banks, controlling the oil and gas industry, controlling the mainstream news media, controlling Babylon the Great, because when you look at America's money system, you have what? The Federal Reserve. When you go into it, who owns the Federal Reserve? All right, it's not Americans or American citizens. It's ultimately small hats. Okay, the red shield people, if you understand what I'm talking about, the red shield people, which are Amalekites, small hats. All right. So it says again, 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and verse 8, "And he said unto me, From Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born." When Jacob and Esau were born, of him Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. Okay, and what does Jacob's hand holding the heel of Esau represent? That Esau's world, his rulership in these latter days will be pulled down or cast down, all right, by the hand of Jacob. Okay, which starts with who? The Lord raising up the remnant, his prophets, his apostles, his teachers, all right, the men of the Lord, standing on the highways and the byways, preaching his word, preaching the downfall of Esau, Edom, and Babylon the Great. Because what does the scripture say? All right. Let's get 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. And just bear with me. Wind blowing. All right. But 2 Corinthians chapter 10, and we'll start at verse 4. It says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through Yahweh Shema Shah to the pulling down of strongholds. Yes, our weapons, as we understand, us the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, as we understand that we're in this spiritual war, okay, this spiritual fight against the left hand side, against Esau, Edom, and his pseudoscience and his technology and all this corruption that Esau pushed before us to wear down the saints. As we're in this spiritual warfare, all right, we don't fight with carnal weapons. That wouldn't make any sense. How could you fight a spiritual war with carnal weapons? All right, that wouldn't make any sense, and most of all, that wouldn't get you anywhere in that war. Most certainly not the victory. Okay, so instead, what? To fight in a spiritual war, it requires spiritual weapons and spiritual protection. Okay, the full armor of Yahweh Shema Shai, as it goes into in Ephesians the 6th chapter. The helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith. Okay, the word being likened unto a sword. Things like that. Being girded with truth. Okay, that's the spiritual weapons and the spiritual armor that we equipped ourselves with to fight this spiritual war. Okay, all to do what? To cast down. All right. 2 Corinthians 10 verse 4 again. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through Yahweh Shema Shai to the pulling down of strongholds. Yeah, to the pulling down of strongholds. In Babylon the Great, America is a stronghold in the earth. Okay, this beast system as a whole. America, along with its NATO and the EU allies, are a stronghold in the earth. Okay, they're the forefront of Esau's rulership over the earth in these outer days. All right, Amalek, those small hats, that's another major stronghold in the earth that we pulled down with this truth. Okay, and then along with all the other madness that's in this world, Christianity is a stronghold that we pull down daily. The Roman Catholic Church, we pull it down. Islam, we pull it down. Egyptology, we pull it down. Okay, Esau pseudoscience technology, we pull down with the word. Okay, this alphabet agenda that's pushed heavily here in Babylon the Great, we pull that down. All right, feminism is constantly pulled down by the word of Yahweh Shema Shai. And of course that starts with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, down to the least of us of the hopeful elect. Okay, like-minded with them. We pull down all these strongholds of this world. All right, it says through the word of Yahweh Shema Shai. It says verse 5, 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5, casting down, see that? Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of Yahweh, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Mashiach Yahushua. Yeah, so we cast down imaginations. And pretty much the root word of imaginations is what? Image. We cast down images, imaginations. This word cast down the image of this beast system. Hey, and that goes to the new song that you read about in Revelation 14 chapter, which goes into what? Fear Yahweh Shema Shai. The hour of his judgment is getting ready to come. Worship him that made the heavens and the earth and the seas and everything that we see. And then further down, it also goes into what? Babylon the Great is falling. America is, falling and collapsing more and more each day. All right. And what? Don't worship this beast. Okay. America, NATO, and the EU. Or what? Don't worship his image. Okay. Don't worship how, this system operates as a whole. It's two-party political system. Don't worship the money system of this Babylon the Great America, which is all paper money, fake money any damn way. All right. Don't worship his school system, because it's all false education and false indoctrinations pushed in these schools. All right, along with alphabet agenda that's pushed in these schools. All right. Don't don't worship his entertainment, his music, which now granted, we watch movies and TV shows and things like that and play Esau's video games and listen to the music of this world and whatnot. But ultimately, we're not engulfed in all these things. Okay. These things don't have a stronghold over our minds. You see, we're temperate in all these things. Okay. And overall, don't worship, okay, the ways of, Esau, Edom as a whole. Because as a matter of fact, as the scripture speaks about in Proverbs, let's see. Proverbs 3 and 31. It says, envy thou not the oppressor. Okay, who's the oppressor? All right. Proverbs 3, verse 31. Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways. See that? Choose none of Esau's ways. Because Esau's ways ultimately leads to what? Spiritual death. Okay? Separation from Yahweh Shemashah. Okay? And ultimately his ways leads to carnal physical death. That's why when you look all throughout Esau society, here in America especially, and all throughout Europe and wherever Esau Edom rules, all you see is nothing but what? Death. Okay, confusion, disagreements, arguments within its government structure, within the everyday citizens within society. You see families all broken up. Okay, children all messed up, children going missing, children, all right, being made a prey all throughout his system, going missing, things like that. All right. And then speaking of, children going missing, right? As you had Trump in the instruction file, that there's no Epstein file. Remember on day one, he talked about how he was going to bring out the Epstein files on day one, and now here we are, 100 plus days later. Now he's talking about there's no files, there's no Epstein files. Okay, just a complete demon. All right, showing you how diabolical, okay, this system of Esau Edom is. Okay, one of the biggest, predators of children to ever live on the earth, which more than likely this dude's probably still alive. Okay, there's even information going out that this dude, here it is, he's supposedly dead, right? But yet his bank account is still active. Okay, claiming that he that he offed himself in a jail cell. Meanwhile, supposedly at the time when he supposedly allegedly offed himself, none of the cameras in the prison were working. There was no security guards around. Okay, so more than likely that whole Epstein story of him, offing himself, that's most likely all just one big lie. As we know, according to Job, Esau Edom is the forger of lies. You see, but and mind you, this whole Epstein character, okay, he's just one small example of, the total amount of wickedness that really goes on amongst the higher up elites. Okay, he's just one small example of the wickedness that these ultimately the elites of Esau Edom have gone on throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, underground cities, all of that, underground tunnels up there in New York, which that was swept under the rug. Those underground tunnels by those small hats. Okay, but nonetheless, getting back to the point though, Proverbs 3 verse 31, envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways. Yeah, don't choose none of the ways of Esau Edom, because the ways of Esau Edom, okay, ultimately leads to what? Death. Okay, spiritual death, separation from Yahweh Shai, separation from his laws and his commandments, his truth, his wisdom, which ultimately leads to carnal physical death. And you see, in our people, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, let's get real quick. This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2, and I'm gonna start at verse 23. All right, real quick. Let me see and make sure I'm still good on the sound. All right, just give me a minute. Okay, still good. All right, call on y'all. I'll shoot my shot. All right, it's Wisdom of Solomon, the second chapter. Wisdom of Solomon 2 and verse 23. It says, for Yahweh created man to be immortal. Now, of course, we know and understand that the Lord didn't create all nations of men to be immortal, especially most certainly not Esau Edom. All right, could you imagine? Because we know Esau Edom, through his pseudoscience and the technology in his latter days, he's trying to tap into immortality via the charagma. All right, altering people's, all right, genes, their genes, right? Esau on the left hand side, through carnal means, he's trying to tap into immortality, ultimately trying to get that birthright back. But the Lord didn't create Esau, Edom, the wicked, to be immortal on the earth. Okay, as it speaks about in Proverbs 16:4, the Lord created all things, all right, even the wicked for the day of destruction. Roughly paraphrasing it. That's in Proverbs 16:4. All right, but the ultimate man or nation of men that the Lord created to be immortal. All right, he's talking about, all right, Adam. Okay, going all the way back to Genesis. Adam, through his descendants, through Seth, sons of God, right? Because what's so significant about that lineage of Adam and the descendants of Seth? Okay, that lineage, which Abraham through Faxad, through Eber, through Shem, all right, through Noah, ties us to that direct lineage of Adam through Seth down to Noah, and so on and so forth. What did the Lord Yahweh Shai give Adam and our forefathers through Seth in the beginning? All right, the laws and the commandments. Let's get that. All right, Second Ezra 3. Second Ezra 3, and I start at verse 4. It says, "And the Lord, O Lord, Yahweh, who bearest rule, thou spakest at the beginning, when thou didst plant the earth, and that thyself alone, and commandest the people." Verse 5, it says, "And gavest a body unto Adam without soul, all right, which was the workmanship of thine hand, and didst breathe into him the breath of life, and he was made living before thee." The Lord breathed into Adam the breath of life and made Adam a living soul. Okay, as it's going to go down, it's going to tell you what that breath of life is going into. It says, verse 6, "And thou leadest him into paradise," all right, the garden east of Eden, as you read in Genesis. It says, "which thy right hand had planted before the earth came forward." Verse 7, "And unto him thou gavest commandment to love thy way." See that? The Lord, all right, gave Adam commandment to love his ways, his laws, his statutes, commandments, his wisdom, his instruction. All right. That was that breath of life that was breathed into Adam. Okay. And when you go into Genesis, the 5th chapter, verse 1 on down, that same breath of life, these same laws and commandments, Adam passed down to his son Seth, whom he made after his likeness, after his image. When you go into Genesis 5, verse 1 on down. Okay. So the Lord, originally created Adam through his descendants, through Seth, okay, to be formed after his image, all right, to ultimately be immortal. But it says, Second Ezra 3, verse 7 again, "And unto him thou gavest commandment to love thy way, which he transgressed, and immediately," all right, meaning what? Adam sinned through listening to Eve, who listened to the serpent, okay, and through Eve being first in transgression, and then Adam transgressed after her, which it ultimately leads to what? Okay, what it's going to say? It says, "which he transgressed, and immediately," all right, "immediately thou appointedest death in him and in his generations, of whom came nations, tribes, people, and kindreds out of number." So due to Adam's fall, his transgression, which Eve was first in transgression, as it speaks about in Timothy's, all right, it led to death being appointed into Adam and his descendants through Seth, all right, the sons of God, being made subject to vanity, subject to death, all right, and even to this very day, we as a nation of Israel, all right, the sons of God all over again, the prince of power, all right, that same curse that was bestowed upon Adam, being subject unto death, is on us to this very day, and that's why, we the hopeful electings out of days, we sigh and cry to Yahweh Shai, for Yahweh Shai to come back and deliver us out of this captivity, and most importantly, deliver us out of this flesh, these carnal, fleshly bodies that's made subject to vanity and subject to death. Okay, and so, tying that back to Wisdom of Solomon 2, Verse 23 again, for Yahweh created man, all right, Adam, through his descendants, through Seth, okay, ultimately all the way down to us Israelites, all right, through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It says, for Yahweh created man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity. Yeah, so the Lord originally created Adam and his descendants through Seth to be immortals, to live forever, to be eternal. Okay, but as we read in 2 Ezra 3, due to Adam's transgression, Adam's fall, it led to what? The Lord appointing death in Adam and his seed, in his generation. Okay, showing what? That if the Lord had to appoint death into us, we were originally meant to be immortal. Okay, the sons of God, us Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, all right, we were ultimately made to be immortals, to be gods on the earth, like you see, under Yahweh Shai, all right, who's the second Adam. Okay, but it says, Wisdom of Solomon 2, verse 24, nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world. Through envy of the devil. All right, that old serpent in the garden, which that word serpent in Genesis 3, okay, is not talking about an actual physical snake wiggling around the ground. No, that serpent in the garden was talking about a man. Okay, and that same spirit that was in the serpent, all right, is in Esau, Edom to this very day. All right, more subtle, cunning, crafty, okay, dealing with magic spells and witchcraft and all types of, left hand forbidden knowledge. Okay, that was with the serpent, all right, that enchanter, that left hand priest that dealt with Eve and Adam did in the garden to cause Adam and Eve to go off. All right, and that same spirit that was in the serpent in the garden is in Esau, Edom to this very day. All right, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, as it goes into in Revelation 12. All right, so as it says again, Wisdom of Solomon 2, verse 24, nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world, and they that do hold of his side do find it. And so through Esau, Edom, all we see is nothing but what? Death into the world. Okay, people dying of sicknesses, all right, viruses. Okay, all this Wi-Fi that we connect to on our phones and our laptop is killing us. He's killing us with these fake foods, GMOs, Monsantos. All right, defiling the water, defiling the air that we breathe with all these chemtrails, and he's even bringing death with weather modifications. Okay, like what happened over there in Texas the other day. Okay, all that flooding. That's all types of information that you can look up on the internet, showing you that was very well likely was a modified flood, for lack of better words, an orchestrated flood by Esau Edom through his heart program, cloud seeding, things like that. His ability on the left hand side to create, massive rain and weather effects and floodings and things like that. But these are all testaments as to Esau Edom, okay, being the harbinger of death in the earth in his latter days. Okay, the sword of the Lord, as it goes into in Psalm 17 chapter. All right. As a matter of fact, let's do it real quick. Let's see what that says. But yeah, as it went into through envy of the devil, all right, that old serpent, which now is played out today as Esau Edom, came what? Death into the world. And those that take hold to his side, okay, envy the oppressor and choose his ways, find death. All right. And 2/3 of our people, okay, 2/3 of our people are following the ways of Esau Edom and wandering after the ways of this beast system, all right, to their deaths. Okay, they're going to take the charagma, they're going to bow the knee, and they're going to be destroyed right along with Babylon the Great and Esau Edom's rulership. Well, let's see. Okay, I don't have to get that. Let's see. Habakkuk 2. All right, because speaking of Esau Edom being the harbinger of death, right? This is Habakkuk chapter 2, and I'm going to start at verse 4. It says, Behold, his soul, which is lifted up in him, Salaki, behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him. Speaking about Esau, Edom. Esau's soul, his spirit, his mind, and his pride is lifted up at an all-time high, okay, through his pseudoscience, his technology, all these blessings that he's received on the left-hand side, okay, to do the working of Satan. It says, behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. And these are the times that we're coming into, okay, which, we, the hopeful elect, you know, the scriptures tells us, be built up on our most holy faith already, in these days now, as we're working out our salvation with fear and trembling. But guess what? When Esau, Edom comes down with great wrath and shuts everything down, okay, bring forth the lockdowns and the martial law and mass surveillance and, bring in a famine of the word, take this word off the internet, that's when we're most certainly going to have to lean on faith to Yahweh Shema Shah. A lot of us are going to have to be separated from our jobs, okay, separated from certain comforts and luxuries that we have in this world, okay, and lean strictly on faith on Yahweh Shema Shah to get us through the times of Jacob's trouble. All right, it says, verse 5, Habakkuk 2, verse 5, it says, yea, also because he transgresseth by wine. All right, the wine talking about what? Esau's false philosophies, his wicked philosophies and doctrines and religions and, his ways, right? It says, yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death. You see that? And is as death. Esau is the harbinger of death. It says, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Yeah, Esau cannot be satisfied, because here it is. He's the first nation of people, all right, or race of people, so you can understand. He's the first biblical nation of people to have rulership and dominion over the whole entire earth. Something that's never been done before in history. Okay, he has the fatness of the earth. He has control over the earth's resources. He has the most sophisticated technology and weaponry that any other nation has ever had throughout history. Okay, he even has, satellites up in the heavens, out in space, something that's never been done throughout history. He has cars, automobiles, planes that can fly throughout the air, you know, things that no other nation has ever had throughout history, but yet this devil's still not satisfied. Okay, he's still not happy in his own rulership. All right, which is why Edomite birth rates are decreasing more and more each year. Okay, because this devil, he's so busy, going around the world destroying other nations and bombing and waging war and destroying and killing. Okay, trying to dominate over the nations, trying to keep his lies forwarding in the earth, that he hasn't just simply sat back and enjoyed his kingdom. Okay, he's so worried about what everybody else got and trying to destroy everybody else that he hasn't taken the time to just sit back and enjoy his own blessing. Okay, to the point to where, as it said in the latter part of Habakkuk 2 and verse 5, it says, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And what is that ultimately going into? Esau Edom is going to eventually attempt to establish his NWO agenda and do what? Stick that charagma inside of basically all humanity, to enslave all humanity to his digital, all right, NWO system. He wants to heap all nations to himself, gather all nations unto himself, have control, all right, have control over all humanity, all right. To basically get everybody to bow the knee to the ways of Satan, which all leads to what? Death. Okay, that's how diabolical, all right, and demonic and satanic this devil is. Okay, he's really going forward with this left hand plan. And as a matter of fact, speaking of the charagma, I believe this guy E. Musk, I believe he found another patient as of recently for the Quran. For the neural link. Let's see. Let's see. In a second. Okay. All right. This is from NBCMiami.com. All right, NBCMiami.com. And the title of the article that I'm looking at right now on my phone is titled Elon Musk Neuralink Micro C Hip Implanted into Patient's Brain at the University of Miami. And this article is from July 7th, 2025. Okay, so this is recent. All right. And it goes into, it says a major milestone was marked in Miami. Interesting choice of words, right? A major milestone was marked in Miami when the first micro C backed by Elon Musk was implanted into a patient's brain at a local hospital. Let's see. Let's kind of go straight to the main point. Let me do this. Let's try the New York Post. Okay, this is from the New York Post, and the title of the article that is on my screen is it's like it. The title of the article that's on my screen, it says fifth fifth paralyzed patient implanted with Elon Musk backed Neuralink C hip that allows brain to control smartphone. See that? It says a fifth paralyzed patient has been implanted with a Neuralink C hip backed by Elon Musk. It says military veteran RJ, also known as P5, suffered a spinal cord injury after a motorcycle accident that left him without the use of his arms or legs. Okay, so this is a military veteran right here, this fifth patient. It says, since his surgery in April, when a team of doctors at the University of Miami implanted a C-hip the size of a small coin into his brain, RJ has been able to control a smartphone and computer with his mind. You see that? And we pretty much don't have to read any further. So this fifth patient of Elon Musk's Neuralink C hip, okay, as a Ray was a military veteran who got into a bad, motorcycle accident. It says in April, which I'm assuming that's April this year, 2025, and to the point to where, he was paralyzed. He couldn't use his arms or his legs. All right, but then now, upon taking on Elon Musk's Neuralink C hip in his forehead in his brain, all right, it said he's now able to control his smartphone and his computer, okay, with the C hip that's in his brain, okay, which is all showing you what? That this is all Esau's left hand miracles in a lot of days, in these latter days, at the end of his kingdom, okay, the working of Satan. And let's get right, Second Thessalonians 2. And see, with this type of technology, that's how Esau Edom wants to gather all humanity under his control. Okay, through that micro C hip. All right, this is all right. Real quick, let me check the sound again. Make sure I'm still good. Still good. All right. This is uh, Second Thessalonians chapter 2. Second Thessalonians chapter 2, and start at verse 8. It says, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord Yahweh, Shemashai shall consume with the spirit of his mouth. Okay, through what? The mouthpiece of the prophets. Okay, those of us, the hopeful elect, starting with the apostles and bishops and elders of Great Millstone. down to the least of us of the hopeful elect, going out on the highways and the byways, preaching this everlasting gospel, this truth, chant down Babylon the Great, chant down his beast system and his image and his charagma. All right. It says, and then shall that wicked be revealed. Who's the wicked? Esau, Edom. All right. When you read Malachi 1, verse 4, it clearly tells you Esau, Edom is the border of wickedness. All right. So it says, and then shall that wicked Esau, Edom, be revealed, whom the Lord Yahweh Shemashai shall consume with the spirit of his mouth through the mouth of the prophets in the minute of the Lord. It says, and destroy with the brightness of his coming. Okay, the brightness of his coming, talking about when Yahweh Shai comes back. Okay, and with great power and great glory, as Yahweh Shai spoke of in Matthew 24, verse 29 to 31. Okay, when the stars of heaven shall be falling, all of that. Yahweh Shai went into that. Okay, so us preaching this word, this gospel, and revealing the wicked Esau, Edom, and chanting down Babylon the Great and his beast system and his image and his mark is all going to lead to the end of Esau's world. Because what did Yahweh Shai say in Matthew 24 and 14? Let's get that. Matthew chapter 24, verse 14. This Yahweh Shai is speaking. He says, and of them shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. Okay, and why is that? Because you have Israelites scattered throughout all nations of the earth, and most importantly, the elect of the nation of Israel scattered throughout all nations. It says, he says, and then shall the end come. See that? So the end would come through the true gospel being preached throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay, what's the true gospel? Is coming from the ministry of the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, down to the rest of us that are like-minded. Okay, teaching the 100% doctrine, the 100% truth. Okay, in the names of the Heavenly Father and His Son, Yahweh Shai. Okay, the end would come. All right, the end of Esau's world would come through through the elect teaching the true gospel. Okay, and so as it's going into 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 8, verse 8 again, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Okay, it says verse 9, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. Okay, so Esau, Edom, the wicked, would come, okay, to do the working of Satan in these latter days. Starting with the Renaissance period of the 1400s up until now. In this current age, Esau, Edom would do the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders, as it's just read. And we go into all right. You go into this word working in 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 9, Strong's G 1753, energia, and it says working, efficiency. Then it says in the New Testament, use only of superhuman power, whether of God or of the devil. You see, and that's another aspect, or rather, shall I say, another sales pitch by Esau Edom in regards to the charagma. He's going to be pushing the charagma as something that's going to give people, superpowers, if you will. Okay, transcending basic human nature. Give people the ability to interact with technology, smartphones, computers, TVs, things like that, without actually touching them, right? And that's a form of spiritual power on the left hand side. Okay, but as it's going into is the working of Satan. All right, and then let's see, this word sign, right, as it went into power, signs, and lying wonders. This word signs is
Strong's G 4592, Semayon.
Okay, and it goes into a sign, mark, token, and then I'm gonna go straight to the point. Definition B, it says a sign, prodigy, portent, i.e., an unusual occurrence, okay, transcending the common course of nature. You see, we read in that article earlier about that military veteran, that fifth patient of Elon Musk's Neuralink. Okay, he was, as it went into, he was able to control his smartphone and his computer without actually having to touch it, interact with it. He was able to just control it with his mind. Well, guess what? That's an example of, transcending the common course of nature. Okay, an unusual occurrence. And as it goes into a little bit more, it says, the definition two, Roman numeral B, it says, of miracles and wonders by which the Most High authenticates the men sent by him, or by which men prove that the cause they are pleading is the Most High's. And you see, Esau Edom is trying to set up him, trying to set himself up as a god on the earth, okay, through left hand carnal means, through what? Left hand carnal miracles, through that charagma. You see, and that's one of the ways as to how he's going to gather all nations, okay, and heap all nations, together unto himself through his left hand miracles, okay, through that charagma and the pseudoscience and the technology, and that charagma is going to be Esau Edom's last great deception, okay, his last great deception before the Lord comes back to destroy him with the brightness of his coming. You see, so yeah, hey, we're just about at that point. It's only a few more events. Of course, Jacob's trouble, the famine of the word, the persecution of the men of the Lord. Okay, civil unrest. All right, chaos all over the society. It's all going to lead to what? Esau locking everything down once again. Okay, implementing martial law and mass surveillance and AI and drones everywhere, robot dogs, robot police officers. Okay, all to do what? Establish his left hand order out of the chaos that he's getting ready to orchestrate. Okay, and the main thing that Esau's going to use to push his left hand order is that charagma. Okay, that charagma, which is all left hand miracles. Okay, left hand salvation, left hand peace and safety. All right, as a matter of fact, let's bring out one more word in 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 9. All right, the word lying. Okay, lying wonders. All right, the word lying, Strong's G 5579, pseudos, which is where we get pseudoscience from. It says a lie, conscious and intentional falsehood. You see that? A conscious and intentional falsehood. All right, a conscious and intentional falsehood. Because what Esau Edom is doing these other days, he's not doing it by coincidence. All these lies and propaganda that he's pushing throughout the earth through his technology, he's not doing it by coincidence. No, he's doing it intentionally, deliberately. All right, because again, as it speaks of in the book of Job, I believe the 13th chapter, he's the forger of lies. Okay, matter of fact, let's get that real quick. All right, I believe that's Job 13 and 4, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, this is Job chapter 13, verse 4. It says, "Ye are forgers of lies, ye are all physicians of no value." You see that Esau Edom is the forger of lies, intentional, deliberate falsehood. Okay, and as well, physicians of no value. And see that Neuralink is being presented as Esau presenting themselves as a physician, a healer, okay, through left hand means. All right, and mind you, this is not medical advice. I'm not a medical expert, nor do I claim to be. Okay, I'm just going into the news and as well as going into the Bible. All right. But yeah, Esau's the forger of lies and a physician of no value. Okay, he's basically through his pseudoscience technology, okay, setting himself up as a false messiah, okay, through left hand healings and miracles and things like that. Because hey, Yahushua did perform numerous acts of healings and miracles. Healing the sick, healing the lame, healing the deaf, the blind. Okay, those that have the palsy. All right, and other physical handicaps and things like that. Yahushua did all those things on the right hand side through the spirit and power of the heavenly Father Yahweh. Well, Esau Edom, he's coming in his outer days as a left hand, Messiah, false Messiah, doing left hand healings and practices and miracles and things like that. Okay, and he's gonna take it to all time high with the Charagma. Okay, in Neuralink, it's just one example, one company among many other companies of Esau Edom that's pushing the Charagma, the micro CEO. I believe you had another company called NVIDIA, if I'm not mistaken, which is also pushing the micro CEO. And of course, you even got the gates of hell. Okay, he's pushing micro CEO. I believe there was an article that recently came out where he talked about sometime in the near future he sees pretty much all babies being born into the earth having to receive a charagma upon their birth. Because just like when you're born, your parents have to sign fill out a birth certificate, with their names on it, your birth name on it, your birth date and things like that. Okay, then you also receive a social security number. Sometime after you're born. Well, guess what? That's the way Esau Edom is moving his outer days. That's all going to be fulfilled in the Charagma. The Charagma is going to be your new social security number, your new birth certificate, okay, your new ID, okay, to ID you as a global citizen of the earth. You see, that's going to be okay your new brand, all right, your new stigma by Esau Edom, because that's what that the MOTB, Revelation 13 and 16 goes into, which Lord willing I'll go into in a minute. All right. Mark branded upon horses. But let's go back to that word lying. The word lying in 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 9, Strong's G5579, pseudos, it goes into a lie, conscious and intentional falsehood. All right, the forges of lies, as we read in Job, right? It says, in a broad sense, whatever is not what it seems to be. And then it says of perverse, impious, deceitful precepts. Okay, so everything that Esau Edom is doing these latter days is impious. Okay, which the word impious goes into what? A lack of respect or reverence toward a person or a God. Okay, and especially towards Yahweh Shemashah. Okay, Esau Edom, as it speaks to above in 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 4, it says, talking about the man of sin, Esau, Edom, the wicked. It says, who opposeth and exalted himself above all that is called, all right, God, Yahweh Shemashah, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. You see that? So Esau, Edom opposed and exalts himself above all that is called Yahweh Shemashah, or that is worship. All right? And he's at the point where now, okay, he's getting ready to show himself as God, all right, or as a God, all right, by trying to sit in the temple of Yahweh Shemashai. What is the temple of Yahweh Shemashai? His people, the nation of Israel, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Okay, starting with us, the hopeful elect. And how is Esau Edom trying to sit in our temple? Okay, by trying to stick the charagma inside of our foreheads or our right hands, or either of your hands. You see, because what? If you allow Esau Edom to stick their charagma inside of your forehead, you're literally going to allow Esau Edom to now become your God. You're going to allow yourself to, you're going to allow Esau Edom to form you in his left hand image. Okay? You're going to be choosing the ways of the oppressor all over again. Okay? Which leads unto what? Death. All right? Matter of fact, let's get this real quick. Um, this Isaiah chapter 28. Isaiah chapter 28, and let's start at verse 15. It says, start at 14. Isaiah 28 and 14. It says, "Wherefore hear the word of the Lord Yahweh, ye scornful men that rule this people which is in Jerusalem." Okay? It says, "Because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death and with hell," all right? Hell meaning destruction. Okay, not talking about a place underneath the ground where you so-called burn forever. All right, no, that doesn't exist. Okay, hell is just symbolic of the grave in the scriptures, death. Okay, and it's also symbolic of captivity when you read in Isaiah the 5th chapter, you know. But in this verse, hell is just talking about destruction. Okay, it says, verse 15 again, "Because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we at agreement." Okay, and how are 2/3 of our people going to make a covenant with death in these latter days? By taking a charagma. Okay, by making a covenant with Esau, Edom, and his NWO agenda. All right, by taking a charagma, you know, by allowing Esau to make them their possession, their wife, so to speak. Right? It says, "When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us. For we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves." And 2/3 of our people, they're going to hide themselves, okay, seek protection under Esau's falsehood, okay, under his pseudoscience and his technology and his left hand miracles. You see, but this is what the Lord says He's going to do to that covenant of death that 2/3 of our people are going to make. It says, jumping down to verse 18, Isaiah 28 and 18, it says, "And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell, destruction, shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it." So the Lord is going to destroy that covenant with death 2/3 of our people are going to make to Esau, Edom, the wicked. Okay? And when the overflowing scourge, all right, talking about what? The nuclear destruction, all right, the nuclear missiles that's going to turn Babylon the Great into a lake of fire. All right, when that overflowing scourge is going to pass through, all right, 2/3 of our people that's going to consent and bow the knee and take the charagma, they're going to be trodden down, okay, and they're going to be melted, as it speaks of in Ezekiel 22. All right, let's see. Let's go real quick. See, Wisdom of Solomon, chapter. All right, let's get this. This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 1, and I'm gonna start at verse 13 and read all the way down. It says, "For Yahweh made not death, neither hath he pleasure in the destruction of the living." Okay, now when it says again, Wisdom of Solomon 1 verse 13, "For the Most High Yahweh made not death." Now, of course, we know the Lord, ultimately, created death and ordains death, as it speaks of in Psalm 68. The issues of death belong to the Lord. Okay, and even as it speaks of in Deuteronomy 32 and 39, the Lord killeth and maketh alive. You know, He healeth and make it sick. Roughly paraphrasing it, we know the Lord ultimately created death. All right, but why does it say right here, "For the Most High made not death"? Because ultimately, it's speaking of the Most High didn't, teach our people, the nation of Israel, the sons of God, okay, the ways of death. All right, the Lord ultimately, wanted us to only know righteousness, His laws, His commandments, His instruction, His wisdom, okay, how to separate the clean from the unclean. All right, how to take care of the earth, how to establish family structure and order and things like that. That's ultimately what it's speaking about when it says the Most High made not death, because the Lord didn't he didn't give our people the laws and the commandments for us to constantly go through a cycle of death. Because as we read in the very next chapter, Wisdom of Solomon 2, the Lord created our nation to ultimately be immortal and be in the image of His eternity. You see, but through following the ways of the serpent, okay, through following the ways of the serpent, and then now Esau, Edom, we find ourselves in a constant cycle of death. Us as Israelites, okay, death through health issues, all right, Jake killing each other in the streets, okay, just you know, just all manner of different ways of death that we find ourselves following the ways of Esau, Edom. But it says, Wisdom of Solomon 1 verse 13 again, for the Most High made not death, neither hath he pleasure in the destruction of the living. Verse 14, for he created all things that they might have their being, and the generations of the world were healthful, and there is no poison of destruction in them, nor the kingdom of death upon the earth. Because the Lord didn't create this earth for death to be flourishing all over the place, for birds to be dropping out of the sky, okay, for bees, for bees to be you know extinct throughout the earth, all right, for fishes and whales to be beaching themselves out of the waters, for people to be dropping like flies left and right each day. The Lord didn't create the earth, okay, for all this death and madness to be happening on this earth. The Lord created the earth to be paradise, to be helpful, to be beneficial, okay, to mankind, starting with the Israelite man. You see, but it says, verse 15, for righteousness is immortal, okay, and the Lord's going to put His righteousness in us Israelites, starting with us, the hopeful elect, by doing what? Bringing us into the new covenant upon the return of Yahushua, by putting what? His laws and His commandments within our inner parts, okay, and giving us new bodies. That's how righteousness is ultimately going to be immortal in the kingdom of heaven. All right, after Esau's world is destroyed, and Jacob's world begins right after the kingdom of heaven. It says, verse 16, but ungodly men with their works and words call it to them. For when they thought to have it their friend, okay, when they thought to have it their friend, they consumed to naught. And it's talking about, Jake, choosing the ways of death. Okay, I'll read it again. Wisdom of Solomon 1 verse 16. But ungodly men with their works and words called it to them, called death unto them, brought death upon themselves. It says, for when they thought to have it their friend, when they thought to have death and the ways of death, the ways of the serpent and the ways of Esau, Edom, their friend, right? It says they consumed to naught. Okay, they consumed to naught. They got devoured, ate up by the ways of Esau, Edom. It says, and made a covenant with it. You see that? And made a covenant with it, because they are worthy to take part with it. Okay, so going further into 2/3 of our people making a covenant with death. Okay, they thought to have it their friend. All right, they think they really and truly in these outer days think that Esau, Edom is still for their best interest. Still thinking that Donald Trump and all these other politicians are for the favor of Jake. Thinking that that these politicians and Trump and whatnot are their friends and they're for their best interests and for the the forwarding of the so-called black community, to the point towards 2/3 of our people are going to make a covenant with this system, still trusting in the ways of Esau, Edom, in the ways of America, and it's all going to lead to what? Their death, their destruction. Okay, death is not your friend. Esau, Edom is not your friend. Envy not thou the oppressor, and choose none of his ways, because Esau, Edom, his ways lead to, again, death, destruction. All right. And matter of fact, let's get this. But first, let me get us some water. Let's get Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 30. Isaiah chapter verse 1. It says, woe to the rebellious children, said the Lord. Speaking about the 2/3 of our people. It says that take counsel. Select it. that take counsel, but not of me, that cover with the covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. And 2/3 of our people are looking to Esau, Edom, in his ways as a covering, you see, as protection, as a shield, right? But it says, verse 2, that walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. And 2/3 of our people to this very day in 2025 still trust in the shadow of this spiritual Egypt, which is America. Okay, America is spiritually Egypt in prophecy, as well as spiritual Sodom, and that's pursuant to Revelation 11 verse 8, where it talks about the spiritual Sodom and the spiritual Egypt, that great city. All right, 2/3 of our people still to this day trust in his spiritual Egypt, America, still going out and voting. Okay, believing in Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, all right, Obama, or whatever other puppet that Esau puts before the 2/3 of our people. Okay, still trusting the system, and even amongst the northern tribes. You know, a lot of the northern tribes, okay, in this country that were, voted for Trump, Latinos for Trump and all this other madness. A lot of them are getting deported. Okay, a lot of the northern tribes, amongst Issachar and the rest of the tribes, Ephraim, Manasseh, okay, that voted for Trump, still believed in America, still believe in the American dream. A lot of them are now getting deported, okay, being dropped in the middle of the ocean, okay, or being sent off to Alligator Alcatraz down there in Florida, or whatever other ICE detention center that's scattered around America, okay. 2/3 of our people, including the northern tribes, still trust in the shadow of this modern day Egypt, America. But it says, all to what? Cover themselves with the covering that's not of Yahweh Shemel Shai, and adding sin to sin. It says, verse 3, Isaiah 30, verse 3, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh, who's the modern day Pharaoh, Esau, Edom, okay? You know, right now, currently Donald Trump, right? That cruel Lord spoken of in Isaiah 19, which is also prophecy against this modern day Egypt, all right? Isaiah the 19th chapter. But it says, Isaiah 30, verse 3, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, okay? And the trust in the shadow of Egypt, your confusion. Yeah, the trust in the shadow of Egypt, your confusion. A lot of these northern tribes, Latinos with Trump and all this, this and third. They believed in Trump and they believe in MAGA. They believe in the American dream. And now a lot of these same individuals are getting deported. Okay, bring confusion and shame to their faces. They're like, look, what the hell? We helped voted for you and we supported you in your campaign. Now why all of a sudden are you passing laws to get us up out of the country? I thought you was down. I thought you was down with us, Trump. Wait, that's what a lot of you northern tribes get for trusting in your enemy. Okay, what is it saying? Sirach 12 and 2. Never trust thine enemy. You see, don't trust Esau, Edom. Envy thou not the oppressor. Don't choose none of his ways, because what? His ways lead to your death. All right? And many of the northern tribes that's getting deported are experiencing just that, death. Okay, being dropped hundreds of feet out of the air into the middle of the ocean. Okay, to be eaten up by sharks, or washed up ashore, while still handcuffed in chains and shackles, all of that. All right, you know. But then, hey, guess what? On the same token, as you have a lot of these Edomite, MAGA supporters, these Trumpsters, rejoicing over the deportation of these of the northern tribes. Okay, a lot of these deportations as well is also having negative impacts on Babylon the Great America as well. Okay, because as of recently, all right, let me pull this up real quick. Bear with me for a minute, a second. All right. All right. Because let me pull this up real quick. So I typed in on let's see if the sound's still good. All right. So I typed in. Okay. All right. So I typed in on Google earlier today. All right. I typed in on Google earlier today. I typed in um, farmers replaced by Medicaid recipients. All right. And so it says this is the response from the Google AI overview. It says the agriculture secretary has suggested that able-bodied adults on Medicaid could replace migrant farm workers being deported under the administration's immigration policies. It says this proposal comes as part of a larger effort to strengthen foreign and national security policy. It says farmers and some lawmakers have expressed concern about the potential impact of these policies on the agricultural workforce. All right, yeah, because basically when you go into it, a lot of your farmers, out there in states like California and throughout different other states around America. But a lot of your farmers that's in the field picking your crops, putting together your produce that you buy out of the store. A lot of those farmers are migrants, okay. And as of recently, due to Trump's executive orders and these ICE raids and things like that, we've been seeing a lot of these, of course, these migrants being deported and taken to these detention centers or being taken out of the country. And a lot of these migrants were, farm workers working on these farms. And so now the current agriculture secretary, Brooke Rollins is her name. Now she's proposing that a lot of people in this country that's on Medicaid that are able-bodied, that are healthy enough to work, should replace a lot of these migrant farmers that's being deported off of these farms. Okay, and then as it went into, a lot of farmers and lawmakers are concerned over those pretty much those deportations because they know what it can ultimately lead to. Number one, a lot of these Medicaid recipients aren't going to work on these damn forms. That's number one, okay? Because a lot of these Medicaid recipients, even the able-bodied ones, are Edomites, especially Edomites who voted for Trump. That were pro MAGA, this, that, and the third. They're all about Trump getting the migrants out of the country. So they're not going to go work on these farms, okay? Which would then lead to what? A shortage of farmers, right? Shortage of farmers working in the fields, picking the crops, gathering produce to put in stores, which that's going to ultimately lead to what? Famine, food shortages. All right, and let's get this. All right. Matter of fact, I'll read it on my phone, the blue letter. Let's get this. This is this is Jeremiah. This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 16. It says, cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest. For fear of the oppressing sword, they shall turn every one to his people, and they shall flee every one to his own land. So it said, cut off the sword from Babylon, right? And when you read this verse in the NLT, it says, Jeremiah 50, verse 16 in the NLT, it says, take from Babylon all those who plant crops. See that? And how do we see that playing out right now? Through a lot of these migrant farmers being deported off of these farms, okay, leaving farmer shortages, right? It says, take from Babylon all those who plant crops, send all the harvesters away because of the sword of the enemy. Everyone will run away and rush back to their own lands. Yeah, so the sower is being cut off from Babylon the Great. These migrant farmers being deported off of these farms. Okay, this very prophecy is playing out right before our eyes. Okay, and we know these these migrant farmers. Okay, being deported off of these farms is going to, of course, lead to famine and a shortage of food, or shortage of vegetables, crops, all right, produce that you buy out of the store, herbs that you buy out of the store, and whatnot. And that's ultimately going to lead to what? All right, famine. All right, let's get Second Ezra 6. Second Ezra chapter 6, and let's start at verse 22. It says, "And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown." All right, suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. What are the sown places talking about? These different forms across America. Okay, they shall suddenly, very soon, appear unsown because of what? Again, shortages of farmers, migrant farmers being deported, and nobody around Babylon the Great seeking to work in these farms to replace them, especially these Medicaid recipients, right? So very soon we're going to be seeing these sown places, these different farms across America appearing unsown. It says, "The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty." And what is the storehouses talking about? Your supermarkets, okay, your major supermarkets, all right, as well as your smaller, grocery stores, which that's very soon getting ready to be taken out as well. Your little small businesses, small supermarkets, okay. Because hey, what's one of the things we saw back in 2020 when the pandemic hit, okay? Back at that time, we saw famine, that during that time, bread, a famine of bread throughout the stores, a famine of toilet paper, hand sanitizer, all right, and as well, small businesses having to shut down during that time, okay. While at the same time, big businesses, your Walmarts, your Costco's, your Targets, your Whole Foods and things like that. Your major supermarkets still thriving during that time, while your smaller supermarkets, okay, basically catching hell during that time. All right. But as I said again, Second Ezra 6, verse 22, "And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty." So due to these sown places, these different farms, okay, beginning to appear unsown due to a lack of farmers, is going to lead to what? The storehouses, your grocery stores, okay, your grocery stores being found empty. Lack of merchandise on the shelves, a lack of produce in the produce section, a lack of meat in the deli section, a lack of dairy and milk in the dairy section, a lack of eggs, a lack of this, a lack of that, a lack of everything in the stores, okay. And it's going to start with what? These farmers being put out of business, okay. Because I believe there's a saying, if I'm not mistaken, basically the farmers are like the backbone of America, something of that nature. I could be wrong, but farming is very, very important in any society for that matter. Not just here in America, but in any society throughout history. Okay, you always needed your farmers, your people that work the field to produce produce, to raise up cattle, to produce meat for the people, right? And so from 2020 up until now, as we've been seeing Esau, Edom attacking the farmers, buying up farmland, through guys like the Gil Bates, the Gates of Hell, buying up farmland all throughout the United States, it's putting true farmers out of business, okay? And eventually, very soon, as we're gonna see the effects of that in these supermarkets. Okay, but as it continues to read, Second Ezra 6 verse 23, "And the trumpet shall give a sound, which when every man heareth, they shall be suddenly afraid." It says verse 24, "At that time shall friends fight one against another." Okay, so due to the storehouses being empty and famine everywhere, it's going to lead to, as I said, friends fighting against one another like enemies. The love of many waxing cold. Because right now, people are still, in their pride, in their comfort, while they're able to go to their local Walmart or their local Whole Foods and see merchandise all over the shelves, see produce all over the produce section, still able to get meat and eggs and whatnot, even though the price of these things are have inflated over these past few years and people are complaining. But for the most part, people still have access to all these things. And so when there's going to be a shortage of all these things, People are going to be fighting against each other like enemies. Fighting over the last loaf of bread, fighting over the last gallon of milk, fighting over the last thing of eggs. Okay, the last box of cereal, the last box of Oreo cookies or Pop Tarts or Pepsi, Coca-Cola sodas or whatever. All right, it's going to lead to the love of many waxing cold in that day, when there's going to be food shortages. And it says, verse 24 again, at that time shall friends fight one against another like enemies, and the earth shall stand in fear with those that dwell therein. The springs of the fountain shall stand still. Okay, what is the springs of the fountains talking about? This word, okay, which is like the rivers of living water, right? It says, and in 3 hours they shall not run. All right, 3 hours they shall not run. Talking about what? When this word is not going to be going out. Okay, when the men of the Lord aren't going to be on the highways and the byways preaching his word. Okay, doing these camp speakings, going live, doing lessons throughout the week. All right, when that famine hit and civil unrest hits due to mass famine, the men of the Lord aren't going to be on the highways and the byways preaching his word. It's going to be too dangerous. Okay, it's going to be too dangerous in a scene like that. As you're going to step outside your house one day, and as soon as you step out your front door, bullets are going to be flying. Left, right, okay, forward, backwards, all right, all types of infighting and civil unrest, okay. And the main thing that's going to cause that type of civil unrest is famine, food shortages. All right, let's go to 2nd Ezra 15. 2nd Ezra 15, and let's start at verse 14. It says, as a matter of fact, let's go back up to verse 1 that we started this camp on. 2nd Ezra 15, verse 1. It says, behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. The words of Yahweh Shema Shai are going to be found faithful and true when it's all said and done. Because we already see the words of Yahweh Shema Shai coming to pass right now as we speak. We see Esau Edom coming with left-hand miracles, the charagma, okay, after the working of Satan. We see the sower being cut off from Babylon through these migrants, farmers being deported off of these farms. We see, political divisions and civil war, civil division brewing up, okay. We see, and as well, we see the elect waking up of the nation of Israel, waking up more and more in his outer days, all right. We see the different signs in the heavens to show that Yahweh Shai is getting ready to come back. Eclipses, blood moons, all right. And as well as recently, brothers, different elder brothers of Great Millstone and brothers throughout Great Millstone have been going into recently, where now you have Edomite scientists and physicists and whatnot speaking about how pretty much the Earth is now going to start rotating faster, which means what? We're going to have shorter days, right? And as Yahweh Shai prophesied of that, all right, let's get that. All right, Matthew 24. Matthew 24, and I'm going to start at verse 21. This is Yahweh Shai speaking. He says, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. What is this great tribulation that Yahweh Shai is speaking of right here? Jacob's trouble. Okay? Jacob's trouble, which is very soon down the pipe. Okay, and even to a certain extent, we're already seeing Jacob's trouble come to pass on a small scale, with these northern tribes being deported, being brought to Alligator, Alcatraz, and these different detention centers, or just straight up being dropped in the middle of the ocean. Okay, we're already seeing small hints of Jacob's trouble happening right now currently. All right, to show what? That the words of Yahweh Shema Shai are faithful and true. And as Yahweh Shai continues to say, verse 22, Matthew 24, verse 22, and except those days should be shortened, okay, these current days, these last days of Esau Edom, Going forward is Jacob's trouble. All right. And except those days should be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So, hey, as you have these Edomite scientists and physicists speaking about how the earth is getting ready to rotate faster and we're getting ready to experience shorter days. Well, that all aligns perfectly according to prophecy, as Yahushua spoke of. The days are being shortened for the elect's sake, showing you that, further showing that the words of Yahweh Shemashah are faithful and true. The elect are raised up in these latter days. The new song is being sung. Esau is being cast down. We're at the end of Esau's world, his rulership. All right. But Jacob's trouble is right around the corner, which means the Karatma is right around the corner, which means World War III is right around the corner, which also means what? That Yahweh Shah returning with the holy angels and the brightness of his coming is also right around the corner as well. And the words of Yahweh Shema Shah are faithful and true. Okay? And those that don't have eyes to see, okay, and ears to hear, all right? Matter of fact, let's go back to 2nd Ezra 15. I'm gonna let 2nd Ezra 15 finish the point that I was just about to make. It says, 2nd Ezra 15:1, Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. Verse 3, Fear not the imaginations, fear not the imaginations against thee. Let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. And boy, oh boy, do you have a lot of 2/3 of our people speaking out against the Hebrew Israelite awakening, speaking out against the prophets and the men of the Lord, speaking out against the true doctrine that's going out. Okay, speaking out against Jacob's trouble. Ain't no Jacob's trouble, ain't no microchip. Okay, all this talk from our people speaking out against his Israelite ministry. Jake all over TikTok, talking all this shit, talking all close to the screen, looking crazy as hell, bugged out. All right, all this incredulity the Lord commanded us, okay, to not let these things trouble us, okay, because we the hopeful elect, we're commanded to be, pretty much steadfast on the faith, standing still for the name of Yahweh Shema Shai. Because what? Verse 4, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. You see that? So all, the 2/3 of our people that don't have ears to hear and eyes to see that the words of Yahweh Shema Shai are faithful and true, okay, they're going to die in their unfaithfulness. They're going to die in their unbelief. Okay? Um, so let's jump down in this same chapter. All right, let me get a sip of water. All right. 2nd Ezra chapter 15, and I'm going to jump down to verse 14. It says, For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. Salakia. 2nd Ezra 15, verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. All right. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up to fight against another, and swords in their hands. All right. And what is that speaking of? Civil war, civil unrest. Okay. All out anarchy and chaos ensuing throughout, the different regions of the world, but especially primarily here in Babylon the Great. It says, verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. Right? They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And you see, and what before it's all said and done, a lot of you Edomites, you MAGA hats, you Trump supporters, okay, that believe in this whole Trump administration and the Trump presidency. You're looking at what he's doing right now to these migrants, okay, but hey, very soon he's gonna be doing that to a lot of you Edomites, okay, because you're already right now, all throughout this year, as Trump has been, signing executive orders and pretty much sending out ICE to deport a lot of these migrants, okay, whether legal or illegal, okay. He's even been hinting at passing certain laws to even deport natural born legal American citizens. Okay, and that can go anywhere. Okay, of course we know that that's going to come down upon you southern tribes, you so-called Negroes, all right, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, all right, because you think all these deportations is just going to start and stop at the northern tribes, so-called Hispanics and Native Americans. No, because Esau is getting ready to come down with the sword upon you Negroes as well. All right, you jakes out there in this world, you black Christians, okay, you so-called blacks that still believe in this system, all right, you niggas in the hood, okay, you false, insincere Israelites that's in these different camps, okay, not teaching the right doctrine, not teaching in a proper name of the Heavenly Father and the Son, still boasting the law, boasting in the fringes and all these things, okay, making merchandise for your ministry. Hey, you best believe the Lord's going to use Esau, Edom as a sword to especially come down upon, all right, you. Because as it speaks of in 1 Peter, the 4th chapter, the Lord's going to begin his judgment at his house, okay, starting with his people, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and especially starting with us that know that we're Israelites, okay, who should know better, you see. But, getting back on these Edomites, okay, what we see, all right, happening to the northern tribes and very soon the southern tribes with all these mass deportations, hey, that's getting ready to come down upon you Edomites as well, all right, because very soon, Trump is going to pass laws to basically deport any and everybody that he's going to deem as, terrorists or against the deep state, against the NWO. And if you've been looking at, social media over these past, few years, okay, who's been the main people that's all over the internet and all over social media speaking out against the NWO, speaking out against the globalists, speaking out against the elites of Esau, Edom. It's mostly been you Edomites, okay, all on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter X, okay, cursing out the agenda, cursing out the elites, cursing out the NWO agenda, cursing out the Charagma, all right. A lot of you Edomites are going to be deemed enemies of the states. A lot of you Edomites that voted for Trump, thinking that he was going to go against the NWO, thinking he was going to go against the deep state and the globalists and things like that. Well, guess what? You Edomites are going to soon find out that Trump was put in there to further push the very agenda that you all thought he was against. Okay? And that's all going to lead to what? Civil war, civil unrest. All right, sedition, as we just read. It said, verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their action shall stand in their power. It says, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. And what is that talking about? Lockdowns. All right, the city is being locked down again because there's going to be so much chaos and anarchy and civil war and civil unrest happening. All right, when these Edomites are going to be rising up against Trump, rising up against the government, when they find out Trump is really not with them and not about making America great again, okay, things are going to get so bad to where it's going to justify Esau coming down with lockdowns again, okay, to establish left hand order out of the chaos that he's going to be orchestrating. And it says, verse 18, for because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, and the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. All right, verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread, meaning what? Lack of food, all right, and for great tribulation. All, reverting back to what point? That famine is going to be one of the key drivers that's going to, pretty much, kickstart off the civil war and civil unrest throughout this country, okay? And if a lot of you Edomites, all right, that that relied on Trump, thought Trump was going to make America great again. Even a lot of you Edomites that's depending on the government and Medicaid and these different benefits and whatnot that Trump is now getting ready to slash. Hey, a lot of y'all going to be caught up in the midst of all the civil unrest and civil war, okay? For lack of bread and resources, okay? You're going to be offering your neighbors, offering your best friends, offering close family members, okay? Often people who have different political ideologies with you, all right? And this all shows you that, what these ungodly, wicked people of the world are going to be driven to do when their bellies aren't going to be satisfied, when that famine is going to hit, you see. And so, hey, and mind you, this is all synonymous again with the end of Esau's world. Okay, matter of fact, let's get this. Let's get Lamentations chapter 4. Lamentations chapter 4, and I'm gonna start at 21. Lamentation 4, verse 21. It says, "Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom." See that? You Edomites that's here in America that's still, believing in Trump, all about MAGA, thinking that Trump is gonna make America great again, all because he's, deporting all these migrants out of the country. Hey, the scripture says, rejoice and be glad. Let your pride be lifted up at an all-time high. You lower level, everyday, middle class Edomites. Rejoice and be glad, O Edom. Live it up, okay? Because it says what? That dwellest in the land of Uz, the cup also shall pass through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken and shalt make thyself naked. See that same cup that we as Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, all right now starting with the northern tribes through these deportations, the Lord said that same cup is going to be passed unto you Edomites, especially you red-blooded, middle-class, patriotic MAGA Edomites. All right, the same cup that the northern tribes are going through right now with these deportations and alligator Alcatraz and being sent overseas to Guantanamo Bay and different prisons around the world and being dropped in the middle of the ocean. Hey, the Lord said that same cup is now getting ready to be passed to you damn Edomites. Okay? So hey, you Edomites rejoice. Hey, rejoice while you're still able to enjoy the little last bits of America and being able to play baseball. Take your sons or your daughter out to play baseball. That's what's going on in the background right now. Eating hot dogs, eating burgers. Going out to your favorite bar. Because hey, very soon that's getting ready to all come to an end, and the Lord's getting ready to bring it all to an end. And that's all according to prophecy. And we, the men of the Lord, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, we're just simply, sent out here to just simply preach that. You know, so don't get mad at us. This is the word of the Lord that we're preaching. Okay, whom you Christians, you Edomites, ignorantly calls God and Jesus Christ. Well, hey, we're just simply preaching the words of the Most High God, whose name is Yahweh, and so-called Jesus Christ, okay, whose real name is Yahweh Shai. You see, so don't get mad at us. Okay, don't uh uh as they say in the world, don't kill the messenger. You know, but hey, Esau is seeking to do that in these latter days. Not only kill the message, but as well as kill the messengers, the men of the Lord. You see, but it says Ezekiel, not Ezekiel, Lamentations 4, verse 21 again. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. The cup also shall pass through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken and shalt make thyself naked. It says, verse 22, the punishments of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee away into captivity. He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins. You see, and that's what's happening in these latter days. At the end of Esau's world, the Lord is making Esau Edom bare, discovering his nakedness, discovering his sins, okay, and exposing them at an all-time high, okay, bringing shameful spewing upon all his glory. All right, we see all types of shameful spewing upon those small hats over there in Israel, okay, with all the atrocities that they're doing in the Holy Land right now. And even as of recently, we've seen Esau been exposed and shameful spewing on his glory with the whole Epstein situation, okay, where again, Trump said, on day one when he was inaugurated, from day one he was going to seek to released those Epstein files and a list of people that was on those Epstein flights. All right, and then now, days later, months later, now all of a sudden there is no list. The Epstein list doesn't exist no more. Okay, and it's got a lot of MAGA people all divided up. Okay, in a state of confusion. All right, a lot of these Edomite MAGA supporters are all pissed off. All right, but it's just all further shows signs of the downfall of Esau's world. Okay, the end of Esau's world. All right, and the beginning of the world of Jacob, the kingdom of heaven. All right, which starts with what? The Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, being sent down upon us, the hopeful elect, the remnant of the nation of Israel in these outer days. Okay, for us to work our salvation with fear and trembling, renewing our minds, making our bodies a living sacrifice, going out and preaching this word, this gospel that will bring the end of Esau's world into existence, and for Yahushua to come back and, Lord willing, deliver us. You see? Let's see. Get one more, or a few more, rather. Let's see. This is Psalms chapter 20 and verse 7. It says, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai, our power." You see, and that's talking about we, the hopeful elect. You know, these people in the world, these ungodly people in the world, including the 2/3 of our people, they trust in chariots and in horses, which, chariots and horses represents what? Carnal ways to flee out of disastrous situations. And that's what, this world, including the 2/3 of our people, are going to be doing when all hell breaks loose. They're going to be seeking to carnal ways to escape the judgments of the Lord, seeking to Esau, Edom, and his pseudoscience and his charagma to escape the judgment of the Lord. They're going to be seeking to idols and charmers, as it goes into in Isaiah 19, to escape hard times. But hey, as I said, we the hopeful elect, okay? But we will remember the name of the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai. We the hopeful elect are going to simply remember the name of Yahweh Shema Shai in that day when Jacob's trouble is going to hit, when there's going to be civil unrest and civil war, all hell breaking loose. Okay, when a famine hits, all right, we're going to remember the name of Yahweh Shema Shai in that day. We're going to trust in the Lord, as we read in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. The just shall live by faith. You see, and as a matter of fact, because as I went into in my lesson yesterday, one of the 3 reasons, okay, for you as an Israelite, or rather for we as Israelites, shall I say, to have the name of the Father and the Son, okay. Reason number 3, as I went into in my lesson last night, was for protection and ultimately salvation. You see, it's going to be through the name of Yahweh Shema Shai, all right, and through our works and through our faith, okay, which we show our faith through our works, that's going to lead to our salvation. But it all starts with what? The Ruach HaKodesh that we receive, the Holy Spirit, all through the name of Yahweh Shema Shai. All right? Let's see. Let me get this as well. Back in 2nd Ezra chapter 9. 2nd Ezra chapter 9. And I'll start at verse 5. It says, "For like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest." All right, the end of Esau's world is manifest. Okay, it says, verse 6, "Even so the times also of the highest have plain beginnings and wonders and powerful works and endings and effects and signs." Hey, we're getting ready to see major effects and signs at the end of Esau's world. All right, major effects and signs both on the right hand and on the left hand side, because we see how Esau is getting ready to come with his signs, his miracles, right? The charagma, AI, his pseudoscience, his technology, his left hand practices of healing, okay, deep fakes, all right, his mainstream news propaganda. These are some of the ways that Esau's getting ready to show signs on the left-hand side at the end of his world. But guess what? We're also getting ready to see signs done by the Lord on the right-hand side at the end of Esau's world. Okay? the Lord, lifting up a standard for his elect, okay, giving certain brothers spiritual powers, right? The power to, to heal and do miracles for the rest of the elect, okay? As well as the Lord doing what? Sending the holy angels to protect the elect and perform divine intervention for the elect, okay? Hey, so we're getting ready to see signs and effects at the end of Esau's world on both the right hand and the left hand side. It says, verse 7, 2nd Ezra 9, verse 7, and everyone that shall be saved, okay, everyone that shall be saved, which is who? The elect, and shall be able to escape by his works and by faith whereby ye have believed. So you see that? So, hey, we the hopeful elect, we're going to be saved, all right, delivered by what? Not only our faith, but also our works that we put in to show forth our faith, okay? Making our bodies a living sacrifice, preaching his word, preaching his gospel, okay, throughout the four corners of the earth, laboring, putting our hands to the plow, you see, standing stiffly for the name of Yahweh Shemel Shai. These are the works that we do to show our faith to Yahweh Shemel Shai. And by these works, okay, and by this faith, it's going to lead to our salvation. It says, verse 8, shall be preserved from the said perils. See that? Shall be preserved from the said perils. Civil unrest, famine, lockdowns, okay, persecution, the hour of temptation. Esau implementing the charagma, okay, saved from World War III. See that? Saved from all these different judgments and these things that the Lord's getting ready to bring in these end times. Okay, we the hopeful elect are going to be preserved from these things and endure to the end and ultimately be saved. It says, 2nd Ezra 9, verse 8 again, shall be preserved from the said perils, and shall see my salvation in my land, and within my borders. For I have sanctified them for me from the beginning. See that? So the Lord already ordained who he has to be saved, okay, from the beginning, before the foundation of the heaven and the earth. You see that? Lord will not be of that number of the elect, okay? But still, even though the Lord has already ordained, okay, who he wants to be saved from the foundation of the heaven and the earth, and the elect, we still have to actually work out our salvation, okay? Work out our salvation with fear and trembling, okay, to show forth our faith. You see that? Uh, yeah, you know. So let me get this real quick. I think I might end it off on there. This is Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13 in verse 11. It says, and that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now our salvation, for now our salvation is for now is our salvation nearer than we believe. See that? Now is our salvation, we the hopeful elect, is nearer than when we believe. Okay? And our salvation comes at the end of Esau's world. All right, at the destruction of Esau Edom. Hey, as our beloved, Pastor Har, Great Millstone, coined this year, 2025. All right, the hopeful, deliverance or salvation of the elect, and at the same time, the hopeful destruction upon Esau Edom. You see, Lord willing, it, all these things come to pass this year. And if not this year, then Lord willing, next year in 2026. But we know Yahweh Shema Shah is shortening up the days for the elect's sake. The elect are growing stronger and stronger in their most holy faith. Okay, standing stiffly for the name of Yahweh Shema Shai. The house of David is waxing stronger and stronger each day. Starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, down to the rest of us that are of the hopeful elect. While at the same time, the house of the wicked, Esau Edom, is waxing weaker and weaker day by day as well. All right. As Esau is being exposed, he's being made bare. Okay. And now the Lord's getting ready to pass the cup that we as Israelites have been drinking for these past 400 plus years, captivity, slavery, okay, being cast down. Now the Lord's getting ready to pass that same cup to Esau Edom, and make him drink thereof, down to the dregs thereof. You see? So yeah, you know, so so with that, Lord willing, this camp speaking was edifying. Before I close out, I want to say, Kal Halal Yamla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Harakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned the truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, until next time, Lord willing, Kwam Yasha'Allah. All right, Abad the ball. And until next time, Lord willing, Shalom. You elect out there, keep the faith, keep hope alive, because hey, we almost up. We almost up out of here. Shalom. 58.